welcome to the stream, guys. One second. Okay. All right. Guys, good morning. Hello. Christopher Queequee. I have to be a little bit quiet because I think Esme is still sleeping. Owlishness, that alien boy, Caramel Cold Brew, Mountman, All Elite Memes, Chameleon Dixon, The Mellow, Young Jimbo Bad Company, Super Planet, Star Wars, Mega Dare, Art of Crypto, DMO Gaming. Thank you so much for 111 months. Is the music lowering when I speak? It is. DMO Gaming, thank you so much for 111 months, buddy. Cowboy with 3 months. The music is a little distracting. Mira, Deceit, Narrow, DG Hippie, Meta Reaper, Vis. Yo, this is Kyle, 6 pink, 1 blue, Twinkinator. Good morning, good morning. Welcome, guys. Okay, all right. Man, what a night last night. What a night. That was wild. Swarm, thank you so much for 5 gifted memberships. I appreciate it. Thank you. Folks, what did you think? What did you think of the conversation? How many of you guys actually watched it? I have some thoughts. Hutch, thank you for the work you did yesterday. Taylor is slimy, too good at not taking responsibility for terrible reporting. Oh my goodness. Man, I don't know what I expected going into that conversation, but I don't think I expected that. I don't know what I expected. But I mean, there were some moments, you guys, where I was really taken off guard because I mean, like, I did a lot of prep. I watched a lot of her content. I watched a lot of her interviews after that article came out. And you can tell that she is very media trained. You can tell that she's very careful with her language. And so you kind of have to know life it a little bit and become like very familiar with some of the ways that she answers these questions. She's just very careful with her language in those kinds of settings. And so that was like a lot to prep for. But some of the answers that she gave kind of shocked me. In particular, towards the end of the conversation, I asked her, because she didn't say in the article, but she said in a tweet afterwards that most of the creators were pro-Israel in some capacity. I don't remember what the exact tweet said. Let me pull it up. And that stuck out at me at the time. When I read that at the time, that really like stuck in my mind. And I remembered that tweet, and then I found it because I wanted to see what she wrote. Where the fuck is it? So this was the day the article came out, and she puts out a tweet and she says, "I can confirm that Hassan was not approached for this program. I didn't see Austin on the list either." And then she said the 90 influencers involved appear to be primarily centrist pro-DNC Dems who have not spoken about Palestine / are pro-Israel. That one really stuck out in my mind. And when I was doing prep, I remembered it. And so I went back and I tried to find the tweet. It took me a second. And then when I asked her last night, like, you know, like, how did you come to this conclusion? I was expecting like something, you know, like anything. Literally anything to justify that claim. And I was a little floored when she couldn't give me a single name. Like, that was kind of wild to me. I was like, wait a second, what? That was, I mean, there was a lot going on in that conversation, you know, like, I took issue with some of the language in her article, and it seemed like she was retreating to a very kind of like a safe position of like, well, you know, that a lot of people worked on this. And so it's like, well, okay, well, that sounds like you're kind of distancing yourself from the language. And she would say, no, I, you know, like, I stand by everything in the article. And it's like, okay, well, why are you blaming this on the editor then? Like, why are you blaming this on other people who wrote the article? Blue Crayons, thank you so much for 14 months. Cheers, buddy. I did, you know what? I'm not going to lie. I did go into the Drama Slop channel and see what you guys were talking about this morning. I saw you. I saw what you said, Blue Crayons. I saw what you said. Hurt my feelings, just so you know. That hurt. Bad Company with $5. Why did Pisco have such an issue with you building your argument by attacking the framing? I can't speak for Pisco. If I had to guess, I think that he is wary of like a pylon. If I had to guess, I think that's what motivated him, because it was like I would say something and then Soypo kind of jumped in a little bit, and then, you know, I feel like maybe Pisco was motivated by like he didn't want to have the optics be, you know, like a 3v1 or a 4v1. If I had to guess. Zach, thank you so much for 2 months. Appreciate it, buddy. Oh, the Discord notification. Fuck. Hang on. But yeah, I think that was easily the most wild part of the interview, was asking her to justify the claim that most of the creators were pro-Israel, and like not a single name, like not one name. That's kind of wild. That's kind of wild. Before the conversation, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to focus on, and that was pretty tough. Like trying to figure out what to do. Like originally I was gonna go just like piece by piece, all the parts, like aspects of her reporting that I had an issue with. And then I thought, well, would it be better to like try to establish a premise and then kind of like work my way up to it in a way that kind of makes sense? And so then I restructured all my prep for something like that. And then literally at the very last second, I changed my mind and I decided to be like flexible with it because like it's a podcast setting. And so I had to just like consider that that's like a different kind of vibe. And so I went into it without much of a structure in mind, but just like a ton of like prep on particular things. But I did decide that I wanted to focus on the fact that like when I was preparing and I would watch her videos, like when she would go on a podcast talking about the article, I noticed that she had a very different tone depending on who she was talking to. That really stuck out to me. So for example, if you go to her page and you look at her video that she uploaded the day of the article, the whole video that she makes is about like this narrative of, you know, the corrupt establishment DNC icing out leftists and, you know, progressives and, you know, funneling cash to the, you know, corrupt like establishment YouTubers. Like that's very much the theme.
Secretly funding some of the biggest Democratic influencers on.
And if we actually pull up that video, you kind of get a sense of like how she's framing it, you know.
Internet. And I got a hold of their contracts.
If we go like I just skipped ahead randomly and she's talking about Gaza. Here, hold on.
In the first 4 months of 2024, nearly a quarter of top left-leaning content creators on TikTok posted anti-Biden content, according to Credo IQ, a social media analytics firm. Those posts collectively amassed over 100 million views.
You know, a section on Hassan getting kicked out of the DNC.
News and media, we are set up for a colossal failure strategy. And
anyways, we don't need to watch the whole video, but like that is clearly like the tone of her summary of her own article is like the big bad corrupt establishment, you know, shitting on leftists. And but then but then she would go into other settings and she would focus on disclosure. Well, this is an article about disclosure. And I just felt like that was like something to focus on because I just felt like that was disingenuous. I think, you know, I do think she had an agenda for this article. I think it's pretty obvious she had an agenda. I think you kind of have to be like really fucking online, like pathetically online to spot it. Luckily for me, I am pathetically online. And so that's what I decided I wanted to focus on. And, man, that was, you know, I've had a lot of conversations with people, but that was like that was like definitely one of the craziest conversations I think I've had on stream. You know, everyone has an agenda. I mean, maybe to a certain degree, but like, this is a different kind of agenda, I guess. All elite memes with $5. What's the difference between the Ogre Boy and Vadim convo versus the one with Taylor? Why is Pisco okay with dogpiling but then runs defense for Taylor? I don't know. You'd have to ask him. I got a little frustrated at times during that conversation, to be honest with you. He's my boy. Pisco's my boy, but... Zach Insomniac with 2 months. Thank you so much. Bad Company with $5. Why did Pisco have such an issue with you building your argument by attacking the framing? I don't know. You'd have to ask him. I mean, I would be down to talk to him, kind of like get into his head a little bit. Is he live right now? Don't see him live right now. Okay. I'll ask him if he wants to fight me or something. He'll hop on. We'll have a conversation at some point. McMitty with $10. Cheers for the actual live murder you recorded live on air. Hey, cheers. Meta with $2. Hutch is apparently a centrist by Taylor standards. True. Mercury Shadow with the primer. Did I get you? Are we going to have a 4-hour stream today of what the definition of centrist is? I mean, I just think by any rational, reasonable standard, a centrist would be somebody who either has a lot of moderate positions or has a lot of like a mixed bag of positions. So like maybe somebody is pro-life and pro-gun, but also like pro, you know, single payer healthcare and green energy, you know, like these types of people exist. That to me, this is like the only kind of like reasonable definition for a centrist. But if you go into like the left spaces online, their idea of what a centrist is basically like everyone to their right. Which, you know, if a category of people is that big, like if 95% of the country are centrists, I mean, it's just kind of nonsensical. But like the reason I decided to focus on that language is because I think she was obviously telling different kind of story with that kind of, like, there's the story on the surface with her article about dark money funding and disclosure and stuff, but there was a larger story. There was a larger narrative that she was telling. And that became apparent when you watched her media appearances. It was just really obvious what she was doing with that story. $5 from Owlishness. JW, did you tell Pisco ahead of time you had a specific attack vector or line of questioning? You might not have realized how well you prepped. No, I did. I mean, well, maybe not that specific, but I definitely said I had done some prep and I gave him a heads up. I do think if I had to guess, I do think that Pisco was probably wary about like a pylon kind of optics. For the record, you do not remind us of white nationalists. That was nuts. I didn't even know how to respond to that. That was like, I was literally speechless. I was like, what? I don't know how to respond to that. Harstar with 136 months. Oh my feckin' god. Snowsource with 10 gifted memberships. Holy shit. Thank you, buddy. So what do you guys say? Do you think, I was thinking I wanted to rewatch it with you guys and then, sort of give my thoughts. Cause there were some things that came up in the conversation that, I wish I got to expand on more. And, you know, I had to kind of like, think in the moment of like what thread I wanted to continue with versus, like wanting to make time for other things. And there were a couple threads that I had like a lot of prep for that I didn't really get a chance to expand on. And then if you guys have any questions or observations, then yeah, type it in the chat. But yeah, let's watch this together and see if we missed anything here.
Would you disclose it?
Oh, absolutely. That's why I tweeted it out before it even happened.
So where's the problem? You know, like,
we'll do it. I mean, but just so you know, I've been trying to get Hutch to come to
Spuds, thank you so much for $5. I had never considered that Bernie was a centrist. How is she not humiliated using proprietary language like that? I don't even know, man. That was like, I have the Jew with $2. You're going to be shocked by how quickly it unravels.
to dinner every day, and I say, Hutch, where are you? What's going on, honey? Like, the food's ready. It's getting cold. And he's just staring at this big wall of Post-its and pictures. He's been writing a manifesto. So he's going to lead his this course discussion with you.
It was mostly me staring at my computer screen. But.
Yeah. What's going on? I mean, their second class finished, so they're done. I don't know that they've started. I think they're recruiting now for the next class, which is why they're hiring this partnerships person.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to focus on like the current sort of course stuff. I did want to talk about your article a little bit, if you don't mind.
Sure. Let's do it. Why not, guys? I'll talk about it till the cows come home. It's so crazy to me that when I was in DC, I ran into like, someone from 1630 and she was like, it's never going to die. And I was like,
I mean, so right away she tells me that, you know, like, yeah, I love talking about it. And then I feel like it didn't take very long for her to start giving off like the vibes and behaving as though she very much did not like talking about it.
Like, it's never gonna die. It's never gonna die.
Well, listen, I think it would help the discussion. Well, first of all, I want to say, like, I think your overall focus on transparency when it comes to money and politics. That Captain America, thank you so much for 20 months. I watched this live yesterday, and as someone with multiple friends in chorus and is fascinated by the new media space, her unprofessionalism and inability to defend her own argument drove me insane. It was something. It was something. That is necessary journalism that needs to happen. And in fact, despite the issues that I have with your article, and we can dive into that, I did learn a lot about like dark money structures because your article made me look into it. And so I do think that there's a really vital role for journalists to be discussing this issue. And so, I appreciate you bringing attention to that. And I genuinely mean that. But I want to ask you just a few questions before we get into some other things here. What do you think is the crux of, like, if you had to describe the crux of your reporting in this Wired article, like what would you go with there? How would you describe? So again, the reason why I asked this question first is because, in my opinion, I think the article did have like a larger, much more meta point that she was making that was kind of subtle. And again, you have to be like really online, I think, to pick it up. And I noticed that how she would characterize her article was very much different depending on the platform that she was on. And if she would have acknowledged, I think, in this opening question that it was a story about virtuous leftists that are being iced out by the corrupt establishment and funneling money to DNC shills. Like if she would have been upfront with that, then that would have been fine too. I mean, we would have just kept down that. We would have just I think immediately gone down that track. But I was expecting one of two answers. It was either going to be about disclosure or she was going to be honest and say it was about the thing. And she said it was about disclosure, so at that point it was like, okay, and then I sort of figured out, like, in my mind, like, all right, so let's take this step by step. Like I wanted to establish some things like right away to sort of unpack my observation a little bit more. Your mom's house. Thank you so much for 10 gifted memberships. Oh my fucking God. Describe it. It's like the main points.
Yeah, I think the main point is basically like what I want people to walk away with, kind of what you just said, which is that like this massive, notorious dark money group is funding this program that influencers took part in that claim to be journalists. And that these influencers basically were taking undisclosed political money while promoting political messaging. For instance, I think that let me just give an example. So I think that consumers and viewers, readers, whatever, right, like news consumers deserve the right to know if the person that they're receiving information from is, one, taking political money, and two, taking part in like messaging sessions, like getting, sort of information given to them by certain political interests or whatever, right? I think that they should know that. Journalists, for instance, like myself, anybody that basically works in mainstream media, you cannot take part in any dark money political funding. That would be so unethical. It would violate every single ethics. You could never do that and work in mainstream media. But I think the problem with influencers is that, listen, and I have friends in that program, but like, some of them, it's like, whatever, they're political influencers. They don't feel like they have to disclose it. I think.
Has Hutch seen the Defense Force idiots attacking him for confronting Taylor? No. I think some of you guys were talking on the Discord this morning about how there were some Twitter posts, but I haven't seen any of them.
They should disclose it. But there are a lot of other people in those programs that are calling themselves journalists. And a lot of them actually wanted to disclose it. That's how that article came to be, is that 7 people in the program came together, 7 of them, and were like, hey, we wanted to disclose it. We want to post about it. We're being told that we're not allowed to, and we'll be kicked out of the program if we actually publicly disclose it. We think this is really wrong, and we want to blow the whistle on it. We've recorded all these Zoom calls. Here's screen recordings of all these internal text messages. Here's, internal documents.
I guess the question that pops into my mind right now that didn't pop into my mind at the time, which was like, wait a second. So they signed a contract agreeing to confidentiality about this specific program. And then after the fact, they were upset that they couldn't disclose certain things. Like, that's a little confusing to me. Like, well, if they were uncomfortable with the structure, like using dark money, and like, here's the thing, like, I don't know how these contracts are usually structured. And I mean specifically contracts regarding dark money stuff. And, she said that this has been going on for a really long time, but I don't think this is a very common thing to have dark money, like a dark money structure funding internet creator stuff, like an incubator program for this is the first I've ever heard of this kind of a thing, was Chorus. And so, dark money structures are set up so that donors feel more comfortable donating to some kind of cause. They don't have to worry about any kind of like media scrutiny. They don't have to worry about like 1,000 other groups hitting them up for cash. I don't like these kinds of structures, but this is legal in the United States, and the reason why people use a dark money kind of structure is because it appeals to more donors, and you can raise more money. And so for a 501c4 to have a fiscal sponsor like 1630, so Chorus had the fiscal sponsor of 1630 Fund, who basically, it was a way for people to donate to 1630, which is dark money fund, and then 1630 would funnel that money down to the Chorus incubator program. And I don't even know where I land on the ethics there. Like I tend to err on the side of more disclosure. But if you're a company who is doing some like novel incubator program, this is, one of the first kinds of programs that I'm aware of in terms like involving creators in a nonprofit. And you want to make sure that you're like protecting the anonymity of your donors, then I can kind of see why that language would be in the contract. And then at that point, I think it becomes like a larger conversation, like a more meta conversation about like the ethics of dark money in this kind of a project. And I don't really know like where I cleanly land on that. You know what I mean? It's kind of difficult for me to call it like an evil thing, because it might be like, it might be like necessary, because if the right are using these kinds of structures to get more money, I don't know if it's like the correct thing for left-leaning people to do, to not use the same kind of tactics, that give Republicans an advantage. So like in a vacuum, it's bad, but in the context of Republicans using these kinds of structures to get a lot of funds, I don't know if it feels like unilateral disarmament to not use the same kind of mechanisms. But at the same time, like, I do understand people wanting more disclosure. I think that that's like generally good to want more disclosure. But then at that point, doesn't it become a conversation about like, shouldn't we all try to like really mount some big effort to get rid of Citizens United? Like, I don't think I want to unilaterally disarm here. I don't know. So like the particular clause in the contract that said that they were not allowed to disclose that they were taking funds, and they definitely were not allowed to divulge the identity of any of the donors. Dark money isn't inherently a bad thing. Yeah, I mean, I think in politics it's not ideal, I definitely think in politics it's not ideal.
All of the contracts, here's all the contract negotiations, here's all the internal guidance on what we're supposed to respond to, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, great, okay, well, let me reach out to Chorus and 1630 and talk to them about this. And obviously they didn't want to talk on the record, but I hope that people from that article demand more from the content creators, and demand that these content creators, are more transparent about funding. And
there is some extra context here, which is that Taylor actually wrote an article that wasn't specifically about Chorus, but did have a section talking about Chorus, like 4 or 5 months before the Wired article came out. So, and I think I recall some creators mentioning that. I think it was for WAPO, for Washington Post, and it was pretty critical of Chorus. And so I'm just imagining that maybe part of the reason why nobody from Chorus actually reached out and responded to her for comment was that they already knew about like the article that she had written previously. Let me pull up that article and read some of the things that she wrote. So like it was already like an unflattering article that she had written, like, well, more than unflattering. I mean, it was like pretty negative towards Chorus. And so I can imagine her reaching out for this article and them being like, okay, like nobody respond because the last one was kind of a hit job. Let me find that article. The name of that article was Gen Z Influencers Who Supported Biden in 2020 Turn Against Him. And in this article, she definitely brings up Chorus because I think there was some kind of an event. And Chorus had a presence at the event. It was some kind of a political event. And Chorus actually flew out some of their creators to potentially interview politicians and things like that. And some people in the Chorus program commented on this article, basically complaining or airing a grievance that they felt like Chorus didn't really do enough to support them. So there were creators that showed up at the event and then were just kind of standing around and didn't really get any guidance or direction, and were kind of just expected to go out and like network by themselves, and you know, they were resentful of this. And so I didn't spend as much time diving into this old article, so I can't really speak to the reporting too much, but it was negative about Chorus. And so I'm just imagining, you know, when she's reaching out for comment about the Wired article, you know, probably a lot of them were like, I'm not going to respond because the last article she wrote was, you know, pretty negative. Zero Yor, thanks so much for 86 months. 27 Matt 27 with 81 months. Thank you.
Most importantly, because I don't even think it should all be on the content creators' fault. As I said, so many content creators did want to disclose and they were told they'd be kicked out of the program if they did. The people that run these programs, you know, Courier Newsroom. I don't know if you guys do you guys know Tara McGowan, Courier? That's
no, I heard
crazy.
you talk about them before, but
yes, they're like
familiar.
the other big. You guys should that's like your type of. That's like the other big lib like thing that funds all the Democrat stuff. Like,
oh, you're not a lib, Taylor?
Listen. I love the libs. I'm not hating on anybody, but
hang on a second. You like free speech? You don't like the libs?
I do. No.
I do think she very much does not like the libs. Just for the record. We caught it yesterday, but in her conversation on Doomscroll, she did, I think, refer to herself as a leftist. And she did speak about, we all know how, like, they talk about liberals. So when they say liberal, that shit is a pejorative. When they say liberal, they mean, like, milquetoast, centrist, feckless, establishment, status quo, you know, like that kind of stuff. I'm just looking for the part in her doom scroll. Hold on. I hate these leftists. And I'm like, oh my God, what is it? Hold on. Let me see if I can find it. Okay. Here.
This was really slow going up until like October 8th. And then there's like huge traction from senators.
Oh, well, they even said, they said that is why they needed to ban it. They were like, there's pro-Palestine content on here. And that was one
Just talking about TikTok.
thing that Democrats and Republicans can agree on. Yeah. And I think, look at where it's got us. Now you have ceded control of one of the most influential social apps of our lifetime to the far right because you would rather cede, this is the problem with Democrats as a whole, they would rather cede control to the far right than allow leftists to have any sort of platform.
I mean, listen, that gets said so often that I feel like maybe we're all kind of numb to it, but what she just said is kind of profound. What she just said is a very like serious charge. You know, the libs would rather lose to Donald Trump or cede ground to MAGA and the far right than allow like the left to flourish. And so like, you know, the way that she talks about libs and Democrats in this interview is kind of gives the whole game away. And yet, you know, she very much kind of tones it down when she's in a center left setting. And I was kind of like watching out for this kind of rhetoric. Alien New Nun Boy, thank you so much for the primer. Rizzius with HK $10. Thank you so much. Good job debating left-wing Tucker. Ooh, I don't know. Yeah, maybe that's an appropriate comparison. Smoke and Tumbleweed, thank you so much for 6 months.
Actually really like a lot of people I like a lot of people in chorus, and I like a lot of people in all these programs. But
and I have black friends, Taylor.
What'd you say?
I'm not a racist. I have black friends.
No, but I'm saying like that program is run transparently, right? There's a lot of other funding programs that are run transparency. Even Crooked Media, you could consider sort of a form of this, although it's quite different. It's a media company. But
so overall, though, you're putting the emphasis on disclosure. You think the crux of your article was about disclosure?
I think it's about disclosure, and also unpacking what sort of, basically, if you sign a contract that says, if I take part in chorus-based events and that puts restrictions on my content, that should be disclosed.
We'll get to that. Because the restrictions on the content is just doing so much heavy lifting there. What is this? We're never getting a leftist revolution when people like you side with Nazis on eradicating disabled people with unmitigated disease during an ongoing pandemic. You are not a leftist. Become one and develop solidarity with marginalized people. Then you can weigh in. Woo. Okay. Yeah, she has definitely referred to herself as a leftist in the past. I don't know if that's a new thing. I don't know if she always did. That's worth diving into. But to your point on the disclosure, okay, so the section in your article where you dealt with the specific provision in the contract that barred the creators from disclosing that they were a part of a fund, like a dark money fund.
The program. They talked that they were part of the funding program.
Right.
Yeah.
That, I think, was probably the strongest part of your article, because I think that does raise ethical concerns that are worth exploring and discussing and hashing out and kind of collectively deciding like what should the ethics be. But we'll get to some of that.
Well, they came out after. I mean, these content creators, several of them came out after the story came out and said, "We're proud to take dark money and we don't owe you anything." So I think that's the energy that some of these content creators have, and I think that's a huge disservice. I think if they start to play that game, they're going to lose. Like that's not you have the disadvantage in that system. The right has significantly more dark money than the left will ever have.
Well, let me well, isn't that the point? Isn't that the point? Did she know who Hutch was? She was vaguely aware of who I was. We had never directly engaged with each other. Like I say face to face, but like over webcam. We had some Twitter exchanges. I think I was a bit more aggro, like when the article came out, and like we went back and forth on a couple things, and I think she's amplified, like those super pro Hassan accounts on Twitter, the ones that like clip him and go after his enemies and stuff like that. Like I think maybe there was like one or two clips that went like super ham, and I think she amplified a couple. So she was aware of me, but we had not like, I would have guessed that she didn't really know much about me.
Was it in writing that they couldn't disclose? I don't know.
Yeah, it's in their contract. Yeah, it was in their contract. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, okay. I gotta hit one thing at a time here. I feel like you hit on like 5 things that I want to unpack, but
okay.
I want to keep my train of thought here. So the second question that I have for you is I think it was in your conversation with Pisco, where you were speaking about the importance of journalists and editors disclosing their partisan beliefs in their reporting. Was that your conversation with Pisco or on Doomscroll?
No. Well, I don't think that you have to do that. I say that, for instance, one reason that I really like to be independent is because I like to make my views clear on where I stand on certain issues. I think that makes me a more accountable.
I don't see, now I need to I think what she just said right there is not true.
Reporter, because they like to be.
Was that your question that I have for you is I think it was in your conversation with Pisco, where you were speaking about the importance of journalists and editors disclosing their partisan beliefs in their reporting. Was that your conversation with Pisco or on Doomscroll?
No. Well, I don't think that you have to do that. I say.
I don't think that's true, but I don't remember the language that I'm going to try to find it. Because I was responding to something that I had watched yesterday. I was referencing something that I'd watched yesterday when she was having one of these conversations. Partisan. Here, I think it was right here. And I thought I remembered her saying, you know, if you're going to be a journalist and have a partisan leaning, that's fine, but you should disclose it, I think is what she said.
You don't like, he's like, no one tells me what to say. And he's like, the reason you're there is because they know what you're going to say.
Right,
like,
yeah.
It's like that. It's like, they're like, well,
Yeah.
and it's ironically, these liberal influencers made the same argument that Tim Pool and Benny Johnson tried to make of like, well, I was never told exactly what to say. You know, Russia just wanted to give me $100,000 and I had to, you know, maybe they weren't even attending regular messaging check-ins for that. Like, you know, I think, you know, Chorus was sold to investors as this sort of like way to solve the messaging problem with the Democratic Party.
Right.
And so then to try to claim like, oh, well, we're actually kind of nonpartisan. It's like, no, you're not. You were explicitly sold as this fix. You're in a New York Times article quoted saying that. So, you know, I think.
Well, so they have to structure the nonprofit in a way to maintain that status. And so this is just like standard things that political groups that are nonprofits do. So that like in practice, they're obviously partisan, but on paper, they're not. So like they have to use specific language. You can only use so much of your funds and your resources for any kind of like political work or election work. And, you know, it's a way to comply with like the letter of the law, but you're still like in practice, you're obviously partisan. You know, obviously, if anyone goes to Chorus's website, I mean, it's not really any hint like that they're a Democratic Party aligned group, but you do have to be careful and dot your I's and cross all your T's to make sure that you're not violating the law. And so you lose that status. And so
I think that that's a problem. I think that like, again, you're probably watching these content creators' videos and it's also like who gets a platform, who gets funding
in my feed. Yeah.
And who gets access to these politicians. You know, if Chorus or 1630 Fund or whatever becomes the gatekeeper to these politicians, which a lot of, you know, people say that they're trying to establish themselves as a gatekeeper, like who aren't they letting on? Are they not letting on people with certain views? Are they overwhelmingly the creators in the program of a certain demographic? Are they, you know, we don't know because there's no transparency on these programs. We still don't even have the full roster of all 90 influencers.
Right.
And so there are people accepting dark money out there who we still don't know. And these influencers, instead of refuting a single thing in the article, which they didn't do.
We didn't get to that, but I really wanted to get to that because they did refute some things in the article with receipts. I do think it was during that conversation with Doomscroll. I don't know exactly when it was in the conversation that she did say, like, if you're going to do reporting, then you should reveal that you have like a bias. If you're going to do reporting from like a partisan bend, then you should reveal that. She did say that. And so, yeah.
That, for instance, one reason that I really like.
And I wanted to focus on that because I felt like in her reporting, obviously, I felt like she had a very explicit, bias that wasn't disclosed in that article.
Like to be independent is because I like to make my views clear on where I stand on certain issues. I think that makes me a more accountable reporter because when I'm open and I disclose, hey, I'm coming to this issue with this perspective. Mm-hmm. Am I wrong? Like, I mean, I go to sources with this all the time where I'm like, well, this is my view,
Well, Taylor, in the interest of transparency, earlier, I know we're being friendly here, but you do hate Democrats and libs, right? Like, I'm pretty sure you hate
Sometimes
Democrats
they drive
and libs.
me
I'm
crazy.
pretty sure I've heard you say
I want them to
this.
win. I hate them because they keep losing. I want them to win. I want them to be Republicans. But I mean, obviously,
we've been just fucking annihilating Republicans for the last year and a half.
Obviously, I mean, I don't want the Republicans to win. They're especially not Donald Trump. He's a fascist.
But on this point, though, like I think you did.
But I do like what my point is like if you are a journalist, especially if you're a public independent journalist, I think it's to your benefit and to the public's benefit for you to be transparent. And I think one reason people don't like mainstream media is that mainstream media will put out content that clearly has a political slant. Certain writers at The Atlantic, for instance, right, that like are going to skew a certain way, but they can't come out and say it. And to me, that's a flaw in our media ecosystem. I think that you should be transparent.
Would it be up to the journalists to disclose that kind of slant in the reporting itself?
No, because it depends on your slant. Like, what are you talking about? Like, for instance, I cover identity verification laws. I'm very critical of ID verification laws. I'm very anti-surveillance. When I talk to the guy at the age verification,
I was kind of working up to the question of like, do you think you should have revealed your slant. But then I also thought that that might get into a conversation about like, do you think your opinion, and it did go there, like, do you think your opinion is present in this article, or do you think that this was just neutral report? I know I had an opinion on that. I think it was like very much an opinionated article, but I wanted to, you know, give her the opportunity to say like, well, it wasn't. Like, I wanted her to say that, so then I could like press her a bit on that, because, you know, and that's where this conversation goes. Yeah.
Association, the trade group. I say, listen, I'm a huge critic of these laws. Convince me why I'm wrong. The goal of an article, like a journalistic article, is to be factual and truthful, and to get people to understand, you know, sort of the truth of a situation. Right. It's not necessarily to share your opinion on something. Some articles do contain more opinion, but most sort of like investigative work, or especially something like this, it doesn't have my opinion in it. Also because like 15 people worked on this article.
And then as soon as she said that, I was like, oh, okay, let's go.
My original draft was so like, you know, it goes through like so much sort of editing and review, and so many people work on it, that it's just like the end product is mostly a result of like, what did the legal, you know, how did we need to sort of reword this so that it's legally factual and, you know, stand up to some like defamation lawsuit, because that's what they kept threatening.
Well, my sense of this particular reporting is that I think you do have a slant. I think you do. I think your opinion is
my slant is probably, I mean, as you can read from all my Wired reporting, it's against dark money, and it is a transparency.
Well, no,
slant.
That's not the slant that I'm talking about. I think you have an anti-establishment slant. I think you've discussed.
The chorus is anti-establishment.
Well, hang on, real quick. You've described yourself as on the left, or I think you even hinted that you were identified with the label of leftist. I think in your
on certain issues.
When you read the article, it's like really clear. She says on certain issues, but you know, and some of the when she described herself as a leftist, I wish I remembered which video it was from. She was talking about herself in a very kind of holistic way. She wasn't saying on some issues. That you have villains in the story and you have heroes in the story, and you have kind of a larger narrative that I think goes beyond disclosure,
but like 15
right?
people were right. But like my name is on the top. But as you know, with an investigation like this, especially one that went to the top, that like 15 people worked on this story. So
well, I understand that, but like for example, so you assigned the label. She does this quite often in this conversation. So often in ways that are quite contradictory. There were many times in this conversation where I would press her on a particular part of the story, and she would retreat to, oh, well, I didn't decide that language. That was like the editor. Or like, oh, well, you know, a lot of people worked on this. And then you know, there were a couple times I said, well, okay, are you saying that language was misleading, or are you backing away from that language? And they said, well, no, I'm not saying that. And it's like, you know, well, then why are you trying to distance yourself from it? It just really, really kind of astonishing stuff. I don't know what I expected going into it, but I mean, I was fully aware of the fact that she's very tricky, like very slippery with her language, but I mean, it was really quite incoherent, in my opinion. Centrist to Olivia Juliana.
Which is how she self-identified. Like,
only Brian with $10. Great job yesterday. Keep it up. Cheers. Thank you. I have the Jew with $2. I thought Soy had your back consistently throughout. Yeah, he jumped in some, I think, clutch moments and recentered the conversation.
15 people worked on this story. So,
well, I understand that, but like, for example, so you assigned the label centrist to Olivia Juliana.
Which is how she self-identified.
No, she self-identifies as a progressive, right?
No, from what I found from my original reporting back from the New York Times, back when I had interviewed her years ago, she was identifying as a centrist Democrat. Back in Texas. That was her whole thing. In
2024?
Maybe it was whenever I spoke to her, which was quite a while ago. But
who's got the thing about somebody found a interview with Taylor Lorenz where Lorenz had described Juliana as a progressive in like 2023. Who's got the link for that? Where's that link? Does somebody have that link for me? Fuck. I don't know what it was, but it was like 2023. And there was an interview with Taylor Lorenz, and in the interview, she refers to Olivia Juliana as a progressive. Was it you? Did you find it, Vishy? You son of a bitch. Wait, where the fuck is the oh, here it is. Fuck. I guess I gotta do a Control F. Progressive. Oh, okay. Here it is. Yeah. Taylor Lorenz. Oh boy, I would start by engaging with and when is this article from? When is this? God, I wish I would have known this. God, I would. Fuck. Fuck did I miss this? Shit, I wish I would have known this in the conversation. Oh my goodness. That would have been brutal. Wait, where is this? When is this article from? Does it say the year? I don't even see the year. Well, whatever. I think it's 2023. Oh boy, I would start engaging with people, not just approved content creators. I think one thing that specific political parties, especially like liberal politicians, have really shied away from is engaging with more progressive activists because they want to stick to these neutral party lines. And I get that. But I think to perform well on the internet, you've got to engage with everyone. I'd be dealing with Twitch streamers and content creators. I would really go out and use social media to try and engage with people, and especially these progressive influencers on the internet. I wouldn't say we're just not dealing with those people because they're too radical or too progressive. I would try to bring them into the fold and then use them to my advantage. And then Guy Kawasaki says, would this include Olivia Juliana? And Taylor Lorenz says, yeah. I think people like her are exactly who we're talking about. These young Gen Z activists and commentators and people with followings. They just have so much to offer, and that's the future of politics in our country. God, I wish I would have known that she said that. And again, I don't think Olivia Juliana ever referred to herself as a centrist. I could be wrong about that, but like, I go to her page and then type centrist. What comes up here? January 7th. I'm pretty sure he would kick a baby in the face if he thought it would make him the most centrist member of Congress. January 2024. The problem is Nikki Haley needs Mitt Romney 2012 Republican support, and the problem for Nikki Haley is that in a post-Trump world, those people are now centrist Democrats. My father started identifying as a centrist, lifelong Republican. Want to guess what the breaking point was? Ron DeSantis, da da da. When this pandemic started, I was a centrist Democrat. It was going to college for English. Didn't realize how much could change in 18 months. So literally back in like 2021, or no, I guess that would have had to have been like 2019 or early 2020. She had referred to herself as a centrist, but by September 2021, obviously she was not calling herself that. 3 years or 4 years before the article came out.
Just to be clear, she never took issue with that. She never reached out for a correction on that at all. We would have been happy to, like, if she had...
I mean, nonetheless, that is an opinion, right? Subjective. It's a very subjective way of
it was how she... Well, first of all, I think we can correctly identify people's political sort of affiliations. For instance, if she's... correct me if I'm wrong on Olivia Juliana, and Olivia Juliana works for Chorus, but her whole thing was that she was a Democrat in Texas, right? Who had done a lot of work with like reproductive justice.
Yeah, right. So she focuses on abortion, LGBTQ plus, climate, voting rights. When I look at these sort of policy priorities, that does not strike me as a when I think of a centrist, I think of Joe Manchin.
Okay.
I think of like Jared Polis in Nebraska. Right?
If Olivia wants to reach out, and we honestly, the thing that you're bringing up mostly comes up on the right, because for instance, when I've covered Nick Fuentes.
Now that's a slippery tactic. I mean, I honestly did not understand the point that she was making. I genuinely didn't understand. Let me see if I can understand it now. I think like Jared Polis in Nebraska, right?
If Olivia wants to reach out, and we honestly, the thing that
Jared Polis is not in Nebraska. I misspoke there. He's in Colorado.
You're bringing up mostly comes up on the right because, for instance, when I've covered Nick Fuentes, he will say, well, I'm not a white nationalist, or Chuck Johnson, who I cover all the time, or not so much anymore. Actually, he's less relevant.
I guess I didn't put it together at the time because I was just so confused, but I guess she is implying that it's possible that Olivia Juliana is deceptively hiding her power level as a centrist. I think that's what she's saying, right? Well, you know, Nick Fuentes calls himself a centrist, but you can't trust him. The difference is that Nick is lying to hide his power level, but I think that's what she's implying Olivia Juliana is doing. But that's pretty. It's a pretty you know, pretty wild thing to accuse her of doing. I just think that in this moment she's kind of flailing a little bit. I think she understands like. I think she understands like what I'm getting at and why that particular label was definitely problematic. She was implying that about you. I don't think so though. How does that make any sense?
You're bringing up
that does not strike me as a when I think of a centrist, I think of Joe Manchin.
Okay.
I think of like Jared Polis in Nebraska, right?
If Olivia wants to reach out, and we honestly, the thing that you're bringing up mostly comes up on the right because, for instance, when I've covered Nick Fuentes, he will say, well, I'm not a white nationalist, or Chuck Johnson, who I cover all the time, or not so much anymore. Actually, he's less relevant, but he would constantly say, well, I'm not a Holocaust denier, right? And so I think at some point you do have to take a look at certain people's, you know, beliefs and what they've expressed and try.
No, but this is her saying that Olivia is hiding her power level, but you have to look at Olivia's actual like words and actions, and then you can see her for what she is, a centrist. Like that's what she's. But I just don't know what that word means. You know, like I just don't know what that word means. I did spend some time going over Olivia's like social media feed, and it's all, you know. When you look at her body of work and her social media feed, it's like very pro LGBTQ plus, talks a lot about abortion, talks about the climate, very partisan Democrat, you know, like nothing about it even remotely looks like a centrist. A Democrat being a centrist would require they have multiple very important right-leaning views that are contrary to the views of the Democratic base. In my mind, that's what it would mean. I think to most people, that's what they think. Like I think most people, when they hear the word centrist, it's going to be somebody who has both like left-wing and right-wing views, or someone who has like extremely moderate views just across the board. How would you define centrist? How would you define centrist?
A Democrat? A Democrat that's probably very, middle of the road, like a middle of the road Democrat, like a Democrat that could opt.
How would you define a centrist? A Democrat? I mean, yes, obviously, I think she's used to, if I had to guess, I think she's used to and feels more comfortable like in more leftist spaces. You can tell the way that she talks and the way that she answers her questions, like her guard is down a lot more when she's having a conversation with Vanguard or having a conversation with Hassan or having a conversation, you know, in a more kind of like left space. And this kind of course, like this kind of suggestion in a leftist space is just not controversial at all. Like they genuinely believe that Democrats are by default centrists because of their own kind of political positioning on the spectrum. It's just, but she's in a center left space. And so when we hear that, we're like, the definition of a centrist is a Democrat. What makes someone a centrist? A Democrat? They're just a Democrat? It's a, you know, fairly silly claim, I think. How would you define centrist? How would you define centrist?
A Democrat? A Democrat that's probably very, middle of the road, like a middle of the road Democrat, like a Democrat that could operate in a red state probably and a blue state maybe equal, like, you know, somebody that's sort
very
of appeals
broad
to both.
though. That's a very, very broad.
Well, it's kind of like the centrism itself. Like as I think about it and sit here, there's a kind of identified more Schumer-oriented Democrat, more moderate Democrat associated with a centrist label.
Well,
and it is kind of vague, right? It's a kind of vague
but
term.
also like hasn't, I wouldn't say that the chorus, chorus has made content with Schumer. Like, I guess I would say it's a very vague term. It's probably the most.
And now we're kind of conflating like centrist with establishment. Like, is Chuck Schumer a centrist? He's definitely more moderate compared to the left flank of the party, but is he a centrist? I mean, like, he's the guy that's partly responsible for whipping all the votes to pass Biden's like really progressive legislative agenda. We're really stretching these definitions. I don't know what these words mean anymore. Martok, what happened? Happy Cinco de Mayo to all who celebrate. Jesus Christ. A little sign that says, I love illegal immigrants. They're really leaning into the just like naked racism. Bad Company with $10. It's so funny to accuse someone of being pro-genocide centrist that schemes with the DNC. Then being surprised the person didn't reach out for correction of their centrist label. Yeah, that's another point too. I didn't really think about that. Yeah. Brian with $5. The conflating of center of American left-leaning party with the term centrist was so infuriating. These things are not synonyms. Yeah.
Broad term, because I don't think we want to get it again like too specific.
The important thing here, Taylor, is to Hutch's point, based on, and I found this when I read your article too. You use centrist as like a pejorative, right?
No. For this one, we say that like when
in general you do. You've used you don't like the Democrats, and you especially don't like.
You can tell she's starting to get pretty uncomfortable here, because I think now she understands. To my knowledge, I don't know if anyone. One of the things that I wanted to focus on going into this is I didn't want to hit on the same arguments that I had heard. There had already been a lot of arguments about the specific language of the contract and that kind of stuff, and there was a lot of scrutiny on that, and I wanted to hit it from a different angle, and it struck me that I felt like I had not seen anyone kind of talk about the loaded language that she used, the descriptors that she used, and so I don't know if she's actually like defended that stuff in her article. I don't know if anyone had actually pressed her on this yet, but you can kind of see the wheels turning in her head here. She can kind of she's definitely, you could tell she was getting uncomfortable and frustrated.
You use centrist as like a pejorative, right?
No. For this one, we say that like when
in general you do. You've used you don't like the Democrats, and you especially don't like centrist Democrats. This is just like your ideological.
Certain issues. I think.
Like this is I am centrist on some issues. Okay, I mean that might be true, but even still, like I think it's pretty clear how she feels about centrists and centrism. Taylor Lorenz, centrist. LMAO, no one gives a shit that she's black. We don't like her because she's a pro-Israel genocide apologist shill. We're seeing some pretty consistent language here. By the way, this was the subtext. She didn't allude to it necessarily in her article, but in her commentary after the fact, in her tweets, this is what she was saying, like the course creators are. Like this is what, and I think she relied on a lot of other creators to make those kind of statements for her. The fact that her centrist Dem stands are trying to weaponize black identity. Not his fandom and a lot of brain-rotted centrists. You're confusing centrists with the left. All leftists do is fight with each other. The idea that expressing solidarity with marginalized groups, whether they're trans, disabled, black people, or any other marginalized groups, will lose you votes is something that a lot of reactionary neoliberal centrists, reactionary neoliberal, that is a contradiction. That is a somewhat paradoxical. That is an oxymoron. Neoliberalism, like in the modern context, is about like, heavy emphasis on market solutions, free trade, but like being socially liberal. I wanted to ask her to define reactionary, but it didn't relate to anything I was asking her. So you hear this a lot from neoliberal centrists. Centrists on threads are mad at me again. Yes, I'm getting canceled by the centrists now. Every time either the far right centrists or anyone on the political spectrum gets mad at me. So it's very obvious that she considers centrists to be bad. RevTop with $10. Appreciate you pushing against the grand narrative. It's crazy how slippery she is, but anyone who isn't ideologically captured will see through it, which means everyone online will hate you for it. Panic Don't Disco with $5. Schumer isn't centrist. The dude who created fictitious Republican voter friends who he then couldn't get to vote D isn't centrist. Man, the Overton window is effed. I don't understand what the, hold on. The dude who created fictitious Republican voter friends who he then couldn't get to vote Democrat? What did Schumer do? I don't understand that. Only Brian with the primer. Thank you so much. Bad Company. I think I already got you. Only Brian, $10. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. Okay.
I think it depends on the type of.
Do you use centrist as a pejorative?
In general, you use centrist.
He's referring to the fake neighbors when he talks about the voters. I have no idea what that's about.
This is pejorative, right? Like you view these people as like these feckless do-nothings, and like I
think you're completely putting words in my mouth that I have not said. I think I don't like Chuck Schumer, and there's a lot of what he says, but there's a lot of people that are quote unquote centrist that I absolutely respect and work with, and that worked on this article. Like there's people just to be clear, this article went through so many editors that have such a range of political beliefs. And I hear you that maybe you disagree that Olivia Juliana is classified as we described her, a centrist Gen Z influencer who spoke at the 2024 DNC.
I
she
think
has
when you
not
look at
taken
her,
issue with that.
Like in her mind, if you speak at the DNC, that makes you a centrist. But I just feel like we're bastardizing these words.
And
well, that's beside the point. I mean, whether or not she disputed it, I think if most people, well, hang on, just let me real quick. I'm not trying to cut you off very much. So just let me say what
sorry.
I think if like a reasonable person went to Olivia Juliana's feed and they saw her policy priorities, I think that they would colloquially understand her to be just sort of like a standard Gen Z progressive Democrat who's focused on progressive
is also the reason progressive has come up so much. And somebody was trying to get me to write a story about this recently, which I was like, this is not really my beat, is because so many people have tried to replace the word centrist with progressive. And this has been like a thing that influencers were actually given. This is totally separate from my story. And this is like something else. Maybe I'll write about it. I don't know, probably not. But there is an effort as certain words become stigmatized or have negative, maybe you're saying this has like a negative view with some people, they're trying to use.
This is so slippery.
That'll save us some time.
Hey, what is cracking?
Hey, how are you?
What's going on? I heard you had some questions.
Well, I'm being a misogynist right now, and basically like Taylor Lorenz's cadence is hurting my brain, so I'm just kind of like I'm psychically hurting. So I figured I could just kind of ask you one. Well, actually, hold on. Let me make sure that my chat actually can see you first before I continue discussing.
Well, I can.
Here we go.
Here, hang on. Let me turn off the camera real quick. And then turn on camera. Okay, that's better. All right.
Hey, man.
Hey, what's up?
Same old. So
your hair looks
people
terrific.
were telling me I need
it?
to check out the Live and Learn with Taylor Lorenz because apparently it gets pretty spicy at certain points. We did start watching it about 20 minutes in. I probably made it to about the 40 or 50 minute mark, but it seems like we're rotating around one topic. And I kind of wanted to pick your brain on that topic, pick your brain on a second topic that it seems like you guys are about to go into, and then ask if there's anything that I'm missing from the conversation. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, but first of all, did you get a hair transplant, or is your fucking hairline just naturally that healthy?
No, I'm cooking with this fucking hairline.
What the fuck? How old
and I'm
are
not
you?
taking finasteride either. Matter of fact, I've talked about this with chat multiple times. If I start, because my hair did start thinning around the crown a little bit, but it's still pretty good, I think, for somebody who's almost 40. If I start losing my hair, then I'm going to shave it like you, but then I'm going to get the follicle tattoo. So I don't know if you've seen that, but they just put little black dots on your head. So it looks like you still have a decent hairline. So,
why would you shave it though if you're gonna get the dots?
Just if I start losing it. So if this starts going back, if it like thins to the point that I have patches, then I'm just gonna pull a Bruce Willis and just keep it short.
Oh, you're fucking rocking that shit. That's awesome. Anyways, yeah.
Thanks, man. You know, it's super poofy today, but like once again, I'm trying to, we're all gonna die one day, so I'm trying to enjoy my poofy hair while I have it.
I'm jealous. All right. Yeah. What questions did you have?
So it seems like for the past 20 minutes of content or so that you were kind of pointing out that, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seemed like what you were trying to point out was that Taylor Lorenz uses either centrist or moderate or DNC as an insult. That seems like what you were pointing at, but didn't fully articulate. So I just wanted to see, was that what you were getting at?
Yeah, that's the more specific observation or claim about her reporting, but it serves a larger claim that I'm making, which is that she claims that the story is about like disclosure and the ethics of that kind of money in politics. But my position is that that was basically just a proxy for her larger point, which is something that I call the grand narrative, which is like, there's the big bad establishment, it's corrupt. You have DNC shills like David Pakman and Brian Tyler Cohen that are pro-Israel and pro-DNC and, silent on genocide. And, they're all conspiring corruptly to line their own coffers and suppress leftist voices. Like, I think that was like the larger thing that she was putting out with her reporting without committing to it. So she would just like hint at it throughout her reporting. And you kind of have to be like really online to notice it. And so like that's like where I was coming from.
No, that was literally the topic that you guys were broaching as we were flowing into it, I suppose, which is, I guess, and you might have just articulated, so I'll just repeat it back to you, but like effectively her accusation is if the 1630 fund is dark money funded by a bunch of, shadowy billionaires, some of it whom are European Jews. They in turn are fun because it's like George Soros and it's some other progressive guy.
I don't think she went there with
it.
I don't think she hit it from that angle, but yeah.
Well, maybe I'm making too much of an inference, but basically the 1630 fund is dark money. The dark money is going to Chorus, and then Chorus, either through selection bias or whatever, is selecting for either people who are Zionists or people who are neutral, and therefore they're propping up. They're ignoring the Gazan genocide, and this is a disservice to the left as she sees it, because they're not talking about the moral issue of our time. So is that kind of like, was that your inference, and that's kind of what you were accusing her of? Yeah, no, that's obviously what she was doing, but she didn't bring Israel into her article, because that would have been, I think, harder to defend. She added the Israel commentary herself after she posted the article. So she has like more cover to say these things, I think, on a YouTube channel than in a Wired article that has to like go through legal staff and, pass editorial muster. But when she talked about the article in various venues, in particular, she did an interview on a channel called Current Affairs, which is like an explicitly leftist/socialist kind of channel. The whole conversation was about manufacturing, like Noam Chomsky's concept of manufacturing consent, and, Chorus had picked these creators because they were, silent on Gaza or pro-Israel. But that got blown up like within days of the article being posted, because several creators came forward showing receipts that they had spoken up about Israel and were heavily critical of the Biden administration, for example. And so like that whole thing just like fell apart. But
But yeah, that is what she was saying in her commentary about the article after it released.
Okay. I mean, that's perfect. I mean, that's kind of what I was inferring from your line of questioning and pressing her, and it seemed like she was getting pretty frustrated with the press. Was there then, sorry if this is a short combo, or if you want to talk about other stuff, we could talk about other stuff, but I guess was there anything else about the Taylor conversation that you remember from Live and Learn where it felt like you were pressing her on using centrist or moderate or DNC as an invective, building the grand narrative as you articulated it, and then effectively accusing people of being either Zionist shills or neutral on the topic of the Gazan genocide because they had been effectively like paid or selected to do so to prop up that manufacturing consent narrative. Was there any other like big hits from that debate that I'm missing?
Yeah, keep watching. It gets wild.
Do you have a timestamp? What else happened?
On the Israel topic, that was like probably the craziest part of the interview. I don't want to spoil it for you. I mean, it gets pretty insane, I think. Like, I don't know if I have an exact. I don't know
if you had to estimate out of a 2 hour, if you don't want to spoil it, I was almost begging you to spoil it. We're at an hour 7 out of the 2:16:41 runtime. So when do you think it's going to pop off?
I think it really starts to get kind of wild pretty soon at the point that you're watching.
So you're actually saying you don't want to spoil it, and on top of that, I should buckle in and just brace for psychic damage and keep going.
Well, I mean, if you just want me to come out and say it, I mean, she in a tweet she says that, you know, of the 90 creators that she saw, you know, they were primarily pro-Israel / didn't talk about Palestine. And then when I asked her to name a single creator that was pro-Israel, I asked her like literally like 5 or 6 times. She couldn't name one. And then
No, we're there actually.
Okay, yeah.
She's saying, she basically said, "Oh well, I don't want to." There were people who were privately Zionist, but they didn't want to publicly be identified as Zionist, and so I don't want to betray their confidence. And not just that, but also I think you just need to go look at the article, or like that's what she said that like 4 or 5 times now.
Yeah, it's
where she just says, "Go to the article, go to the article, go to the article."
Yeah, but then I went to the article and I said, okay, well, you named names in the article. So like, which among these people are pro-Israel? You said that they were primarily pro-Israel and not a single name. I mean, that kind of shocked me. I wasn't prepared for that. Like, I thought she would at least try to make a case for like 1 or 2 people, but like nothing. Like that was, pretty wild.
Okay. Well, then I'll hang in there, man. I just maybe I needed a little bit of a break from the psychic damage, and I'll share with you my misogynist joke.
No,
it's not even that misogynist. I don't think.
I don't want to.
Have you ever seen the movie Mars Attacks?
I know of that movie, but I have never seen that movie.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, it's like a 20-year-old movie. It's a dark comedy. Martians invade Earth, and they kind of talk where they're like ack.
Yeah.
And so for me, unfortunately, Taylor, and I'm not trying to be too mean about it, but her cadence is like very similar to the and so like for me, I'm just like suffering through this conversation where not only do I not like what she's saying, but I also feel like it has a very similar cadence. And so my desire to turn on yodeling music is increasing, because that's how you defeat the Martians is you turn on yodeling music.
Well, she definitely got... I didn't think that she would get as frustrated as she did so fast, but she definitely got pretty frustrated early on, and then she definitely loses full composure at a couple moments. But yeah.
Well, let me ask you this question then. How is your crusade going? Because you are my so what I said earlier today, it's like if Hutch was the Democratic Party and we disagreed on gun control or military interventionism or social safety nets or something like that, then I feel like we could have like a technocratic policy based conversation and try to advocate for the well-being of the American people. And we could probably result in some kind of compromise that resulted in, good legislation for the American people. But
that would be ideal.
It feels increasingly like you're representative of a substantial part of the party, but it also seems like you have to consistently fight with further left people, regardless of whether or not they're more progressive or more economically leftist or whatever. And it seems like you're throwing elbows with those people. So how do you view your current crusade / battle against the leftists?
I just feel like this has been going on for a really long time. It's getting worse. And when I say this, I mean, like, I mentioned the grand narrative before. Like, they're buying into that more and more and more. And it's repeated so often in those spaces that it's become just accepted as fact. There's actually a word for this. It's called, chat. What was it called again? The concept is, it's a psychological concept, I think. And it's just basically, I think it pertains to like cults maybe, but yeah, some claim gets repeated so often and people see other people with credibility saying it. And so in their minds, they don't really like think to fact check because, well,
it's just accept it as true. It's like building consensus. Yeah.
Oh God, what is it called? It's something in psychology, but I think that has happened in those spaces for like so many of these claims. And I think it's like the fact that they believe this so wholeheartedly that, that they would win more elections if they're pretty much like MAGA. Like they think that like when their candidates lose, it's because it's a rigged system. But when someone that they consider to be a illusory truth effect is what it's called. Yeah. But when a candidate they consider to be a centrist, which is like literally everyone to their right. So like 95% of the Democratic Party are centrist in their minds. Then when they lose, it's because they ran a shitty campaign and didn't
right. They didn't go far enough left.
Right. And so like there's all kinds of like narratives in that space that they just accept. Like one just came up in a moment ago when I was reviewing something that Taylor Lorenz said months ago, but she made the claim that centrist Democrats would rather essentially like cede ground to the far right or let the fascists win than work with progressives. Like this is just something that's repeated every day in that space, and they wholeheartedly believe it. And so when they say
they only cite Fetterman as their example, like Fetterman's their only example of a Democrat who seems to want to actively work with moderate Republicans or MAGA instead of progressives or leftists. They don't have any other examples, so it's like statistically not true.
They definitely talk about other Democrats, but he gets most of their ire these days, which is interesting because he was the guy that they like really aggressively pushed. I mean, I was pro Fetterman in 2022, but was it 2022 or 2024 that he won? I think it was 2022. I was pro Fetterman back then, but I mean, I don't really love him these days. I mean, I do think that
he's basically diet MAGA. I don't expect him to like he, at least from what I see, he's always doing apologia for Israel, and I'm a Israel apologist myself. So, but it does seem like he goes hard in the paint for them sometimes.
He's truly brain broken on Israel. Like he uses dehumanizing language.
Very anti-leftist, although I think he was categorized when he was running as kind of like a blue-collar Democrat, right? Like a working class union guy. But he does seem to have like a overt hostility towards like academic leftists, which is interesting. But I wanted to bring these two things up. What I think argumentatively kind of blows a hole in the narrative of like centrist Democrats always lose. Number one, Joe Biden fucking won. So fuck you. That's like a stupid talking point. But then also, all these like giga progressives, they keep winning in like deep blue districts.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if you were running as a leftist, hardcore fucking, socialist or whatever, and you were winning in, I don't know, Dallas, then I would be like, oh shit, there actually is like a hunger for a deeper economic populism that the American people are not being satisfied with, and the leftists are just descriptively correct. Whereas if you're winning in fucking New York, that doesn't impress. Like on a 3-way split ticket, that doesn't impress me.
I do think that there is a hunger out there for economic populism and populist rhetoric, but I don't know if it's necessarily ideological. So, someone like Tallarico, are you familiar with him in Texas?
Yeah. But he couches, sorry, jumping ahead a little bit. His economic populism is oftentimes backstopped by his religious credentials.
Yeah. Right. So he's doing a kind of lighter populism that's not explicitly leftist. Graham Plattner is definitely leftist, and so his success in Maine is like an interesting bellwether to look at. El Sayed is seemingly positioned pretty decently right now in Michigan. But yeah, to your point, like they would, as soon as they start flipping red seats, that's when you get to say, wait, hang on, their movement is like catching fire. But so far, that's still not really happening. And but they see these wins they see like Mamdani's win in NYC and Plattner's success in that primary, and to a lesser degree, Tallarico. I feel like they backed him over Crockett. So they think that, like, I don't know, like Kyle Kulinski and Hassan, they definitely talk about this moment like it's like they're, a
watershed.
They're like, exploding all over the country, and there's just not. I haven't seen any evidence of that yet. Maybe that happens in 2028, but
Well, my obvious concern, because like I'm somebody who doesn't like populism in general, is that effectively by and we're a part of this, argumentatively a part of this ecosystem, but I think that we're slave to it one way or the other. Is that so? A mainstream source will, like Yale, New York Times, whatever. They'll do some kind of like puff piece or debate with Hassan, which lends him additional credibility. But then the more moderates will attack Hassan, which then blows it up as a story within alternative media and the mainstream media. And so there's this like vicious feedback cycle of, here's Hassan doing something, everyone attacks him because they hate him, but then it boosts his profile. So then more people are incentivized to interact with him because they know they're going to get the click through. They know they're going to get, the watch time. They know that they're going to get the articles are going to get read. Yeah. And this perverse incentive was particularly done. I don't always pay attention to Ezra Klein, but I kind of like Ezra Klein as an abundance liberal. But his original title for his Hassan Piker puff piece was Hassan Piker Was Not Your Enemy. Yeah. And then I read the puff piece, and the puff piece wasn't that bad. It was more talking about like, we shouldn't force people out of the Overton window, and we should work with people whenever there's an electoral advantage. And, there was nothing really objectionable about the piece, but he got me to rage click on the fucking article through the fucking title. Yeah. And so I'm a part of this ecosystem.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have anything to add to that.
Right, well, I think you nailed it. I want to bring up one other point, and then if there's nothing really burning you, those were the main things that I wanted to talk about. So I'll give this additional time to psychically damage me. But one of the things that I was frustrated with conversationally was it seemed like you really wanted to go down on the centrist route, but I felt like it just would have been clearer, I suppose, if you said, hey, Taylor, don't you use centrist or moderate as an insult?
Well, that's what Soypill did. That's what he beat me to it, but I was going there. But Soypill did that, yeah. Did you get to that part of the conversation?
Well, I wanted to bring up this historical fact. So the Berlin Wall, the wall that separated East and West Germany, was called the anti-fascist wall by the Soviet Republic.
Oh,
and
wow.
so effectively, like, they view any kind of mixed economy capitalist, any kind of moderate, any kind of centrist as effectively like either a fascist enabler or a crypto fascist themselves. Yeah. And so that's where, for me, Taylor Lorenz, if she called you a centrist, I would basically wear it as a badge of honor, because to her, anybody fucking right of Bernie Sanders is a fucking fascist. So
did you get to the point where she called Bernie Sanders a centrist?
No, but she called you a fucking, she was like, I feel like I'm arguing with a white nationalist.
keep going because she debate broed herself into saying that AOC and Bernie could be considered centrist. It's pretty funny.
Nice. Yeah. God damn it. Okay. Well, if I'm going to continue to cyclically damage myself with that content, I need to get started. Otherwise, I'm probably going to die. So is there anything else going on in your world? Anything cool? Anything fucked up? Anything,
No, we're just going through the same interview now and just answering like viewer questions and stuff like that. So hope you enjoy the video.
Okay. I'm enjoying it as a piece of content, but it is psychically, rupturing blood vessels in my skull. So, I mean, great content, but you might actually kill me on stream.
I understand. Yeah. All right, man. Well, you take it easy.
You too. Oh. Bye, buddy.
Okay. All right. There we go. I don't even remember what part we are in this.
There is a thing that about this recently, which I was like, this is really my beat, is because so many people have tried to replace the word centrist with progressive. And this has been like a thing that influencers were actually given. This is totally separate from my story. And this is like something else. Maybe I'll write about it. I don't know. Probably not. But I
didn't even know what she was talking about here. Who's trying to replace the word centrist with progressive? Like bad faith right wing people?
There is an effort as certain words become stigmatized or have negative, maybe you're saying this has like a negative view with some people, they're trying to use other words. So you see them.
You're saying maybe centrist has a negative view with some people. So like she's just very blatantly like lying or being deceptive here, which is odd because didn't Soypill just like 2 minutes prior to this get her to agree that she uses centrist as a pejorative? And then 2 minutes later, she's like, some people think centrist is a bad label. It's like, we're talking about you. You very obviously think centrist is a bad label, right?
Use the word progressive instead of centrist or the word whatever.
No. I'm not talking about self-assigned labels. I mean, I think most people would look at her policy proposals and think, okay, that's just
what do you think about Biden, Hutch? I mean, let's be honest, right? Like, so if Biden were described as a centrist Democrat.
Olivia Giuliano was a Biden dead ender. So she absolutely is a Biden Democrat.
That does not... No,
would you describe Biden as progressive?
Hang on, yes.
AOC and Bernie were Biden dead
exactly, yes. AOC and Bernie Sanders were...
describe them as Democrats. I guess they're not.
AOC
they're progressives, right? They're progressives, right? That doesn't make them as centrist.
I would call them democratic socialists, right?
Well, listen, if you had to choose between progressive and centrist to describe AOC and Bernie, what would you choose?
It totally depends on the context of the article.
I feel like... In what context? Bernie Sanders, AOC, fucking centrist. In what context?
Because Bernie has been because look at what Bernie's been doing with his AI policy. Like I think
nobody would call him a centrist. Nobody
I
would
wouldn't call him, but I
wouldn't
call him progressive either on certain things.
I mean, she really backed herself into a corner, I think, on this one. Wow. I don't understand what these words mean anymore. I mean, like more broadly, you said that there were 90. Did you see a list of 90 people? Is that how many people you saw?
So just to be clear, I understand that you take issue with the way that editors categorize these.
You see what she did here? She's very obviously backing away from the language because I think she's having a hard time defending that language. And so she sneaks in this, and the way that she says it too is like very sneaky. It's like kind of subtle, right? Like she's kind of laundering in this idea that her editors use that language instead of her, which is a bit odd because if you're saying that the problem is that I have an unreasonable issue with the language, well, why are you backing away from the language? Now you're distancing yourself from the language and you're saying, well, my editors were the ones that called her a centrist. But it is very sneaky. I mean, like, pay attention to the words that she uses here, like it's almost like a passive part of her sentence. Like, I understand that you have an issue with ... the language that my editors wrote. It's like, you kind of have to like pay attention to the stuff,
people, but
that's an opinion though. You're inserting
it's not an opinion. Well, this is Chuck Johnson saying that us calling him a Holocaust denier is an opinion, or us saying that Tucker Carlson is a right winger is an opinion. All we can do is try to best reflect the ideology that often we use self-ascribed ideologies.
Well, the difference would be that, calling Tucker Carlson far right would be accurate, like that's the difference. Hutch, you have to read the article. I read that article maybe 4, 5, 6 times when I was preparing for this thing. Like I was like really kind of picking apart like each section and figuring out like exactly, Because by focusing instead on the language that she was using and the descriptors, the descriptors that she was using, rather than focus on some of the things that people had already focused on, there's a lot of like really loaded language throughout that entire interview. And so there was actually a lot to pick through.
But all we can do,
I think she self-describes as a progressive at this point. So that's where I'm a little bit, and has since 2021 at the earliest.
At this point, maybe, but I would say again, if you ask actual people that are further to the left.
At this point, maybe. Well, that's problematic. You know, in your reporting, you describe her as a centrist, but she describes herself as a progressive, and just like very obviously is a progressive when you look. So like, doesn't that speak poorly on your reporting? Like, your reporting is wrong. That descriptor is just very plainly wrong.
And her, they will say not. So
well, that's the issue. That's the issue.
Right, and that's
our left tankies will call Bernie Sanders a centrist, but it's not accurate.
No, but that's the issue, because I think you're framing your article from the position of like the left.
But I didn't even write that line. So like
well, your name's on the
Of course,
so
but I want you to understand how journalism works, right?
Okay.
The way that.
And then it's like, I mean, in my opinion, in this moment, she's really flailing. You know, now we're at a point where now she's hitting me with the condescending, like, you just don't know how reporting works, which I prepared for the record. I watched her do this many times with other people.
Journalism works. It's not just that Wired is my personal blog and I can go and write whatever I want, right? And I can just go and publish on Wired and nobody's going to look at it, right? No, especially with an investigation like this, the way it happens is
so obviously she was very uncomfortable in the substance of this line of questioning. And so instead she retreats to this position. There's like a two-pronged thing that she's doing here, which is number one, well, you just don't know how journalism works. But number two, well, you know, actually she's kind of retreating under the protective blanket of, you know, like, well, Wired is really credible. They have, you know, it's Wired. They have a bunch of people worked on this, and you know, like, who are you to question an article with 15 editors or whatever?
I find information, right? I get people trying to whistleblow in this case about a program that they're in. And I go to an editor and I say, hey, I have all of this source material, all of this people. Would you be interested in a story? Yes. Okay. I work with that editor to draft the story. It then goes through rounds, in this case, rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds of review from many different editors that not only transform the story, rewrite parts of the story, add things, take things away, but also then it goes through legal review. Then it goes through copy.
You know, so it's like, okay, well, are you agreeing with me that centrist was not appropriate language? I mean, that seems like a problem with your reporting, right?
Edits and stuff. Like,
yeah,
it goes through. So, but I just want you to understand, because I think, yes, my name is at the top of the story because this is my reporting. This is my reporting that I brought forward fundamentally. But if you're going to take issue with like random sort of characterizations, and again, I understand.
I don't think it's random. I think it was deliberate. I think it was deliberate.
Okay,
framing.
well, I guess.
Why don't you get to there? I mean,
Pisco, who is my boy that I love, that's what I'm doing. That's literally what I'm doing. That is what I'm doing. I mean, at this point, I think in the conversation, I had already said as much 3 or 4 times.
Why don't you go there?
I'm going to take issue with like random sort of characterizations. And again, I understand.
I don't think it's random. I think it was deliberate. I think it was deliberate.
Okay,
framing.
well, I guess.
Why don't you get to there? I mean, why don't you go there and just ask Taylor?
With the copy editor.
I'm trying to have a conversation with her. I don't know why you're jumping in here.
No, because it's kind of a stupid critique to be like, hey, you know, centrist. It's kind of in the eye of the beholder. Like, yeah, so Joe Biden would describe himself as a centrist.
I mean, again, Soypill had already like pressed her. The whole point was that she uses the language as a pejorative, and that the language was intentional. And I feel like at this point in the conversation, it's firmly established. And I don't really understand Pisco jumping in here too. I don't really understand, you know, like jumping in here.
No, because it's kind of a stupid critique to be like, hey, you know, centrist. It's kind of in the eye of the beholder. Like, yeah, so Joe Biden would describe himself as a centrist Democrat, correct? Yes or no?
No, Pisco. The whole point.
Wait, can you answer that first? Can you answer that? So the question you should ask, is, Taylor, did you?
Let me finish my track.
The question that you should ask is, Taylor, were you attempting to imply something nefarious?
We already did that, though. You know what I mean? Like, we already did that. So I really don't understand this. We already did that.
When you use centrist there, were you trying to imply that they were aligned with the DNC?
That's But that's what I just said. Hang on. Hang on. Bro, I have a conversation.
Characterizations. And again, I understand.
I don't think it's random. I think it was deliberate. I think that's me saying that right there. That's literally what I just fucking said. She didn't concede that she uses it only as a pejorative. Well, I mean, whether or not she conceded it, I mean, like I feel like we established that in this conversation. I mean, she can try to deny that, but you know, it's very obvious that she uses that word as a negative thing. It was deliberate.
Okay, well, I guess.
Why don't you get to there? I mean, like, why don't you go there and just ask Taylor?
The copy editor.
I'm trying to have a conversation with her. I don't know why you're jumping in here.
No, because it's kind of a stupid critique to be like, hey, you know, centrist. It's kind of the eye of the beholder. Like, yeah. So Joe Biden would describe himself as a centrist Democrat, correct? Yes or no?
No, peaceful. The whole point.
Wait. Can you answer that first? Can you answer that? So the question you should ask. The question you should ask is, Taylor, did you?
Let me finish my track.
The question that you should ask is, Taylor, were you attempting to imply something nefarious when you use centrist there? Were you trying to imply that they're aligned with the DNC?
Well, I didn't ask it in the form of a question. I just directly told her that that's what she's doing. You know, like, well,
ask the question about her intention.
Listen, Taylor, respectfully, I think you were doing that. I think you were.
I didn't even write that. I wrote the list of influencers' names. I didn't even originally.
Well, here we have another spot here where you say, listen, I was very careful. Like, I can be an animated person. I can, you know, I can kind of fly off the handle sometimes. I can be very emotive and it's hard for me to hide contempt sometimes. I'll say it that way. And I was very, very careful in this exchange to not to be respectful. You know, like, this is a journalist who wrote a story that is now the, you know, canonical like record in the media about Chorus. And, you know, any journalist should be prepared to defend their writing. Like, that is a completely reasonable standard for a journalist. I'm not asking unfair questions here. I don't think I've insulted her a single time. I don't think I've pressed her too aggressively. Like, I've been assertive, but not disrespectful. And the fact that she got flustered, I mean, she's really flustered right here over me asking completely reasonable questions in a polite tone. I mean, I just think like that is pretty telling. Like, why is she getting flustered right here? I'm asking, like, these are fair questions. TrackVam, thank you so much for Trav Cam. Thank you so much for $2. Lorenz talks like the CEO of Human Resources. Kitten Mittens with the Tier 1 membership. Thank you so much. Barabas with the 10-month membership. Taylor should be begging BTC for his forgiveness. Well, I think she loathes Brian Tyler Cohen. That's the sense that I get with the words that she chooses, her tone, things that she says about him. I think she sees Brian Tyler Cohen as like big bad establishment shill. Rev Top with $2. Everyone's a centrist till a real centrist pulls up. Tristan Brooks with $10. For confrontations like this with Taylor, would collaborating with your co-host on topics beforehand help? It's very frustrating to hear you get talk blocked by your boy. I mean, maybe. I don't know. I feel like it's pretty obvious. Soy Pill picked up on where I was going with it. He didn't seem to have a problem picking up on that. RevTop with $5 should have asked if Trump is far right or a centrist. He's the face of the party, isn't he? It's actually insane that she couldn't just admit that point. Trib with $2. Thanks for towing the party line. Checks in the mail. Only Brian, did I get you with the primer? Thank you. Say that.
Hutch, before you do the next thing, I
didn't even write that. I wrote the list of influencers.
Like, why is she getting flustered? I don't understand. Well, I do understand. I think that she understood that this was like very difficult to defend, and I think that's why she's squirming a bit. But I just can't imagine, like, if I brought on another journalist, you know, like someone who was covering like Ukraine, and I had questions like this, I wouldn't expect them to get flustered like this. But she's so flustered right here.
Imply that they're aligned with the DNC.
Well,
ask the question about her intention.
Listen, Taylor, respectfully, I think you were doing that. I think you were.
I didn't even write that. I wrote the list of influencers' names. I didn't even originally.
Well, here we have another slide. This is really unprofessional, in my opinion. Dog, you are a feckin' journalist. What is this? Old secular humanist with 10 gifted memberships. Thank you so much. I mean, I just think this is like very unprofessional. Is it not standard? Like, if you're going to be, obviously this, this story came out fucking, I don't even know, 9 months ago or whatever. So it's been a little while, but if you're a journalist that's going to make media appearances, then you should be prepared to defend your work. And the defenses that she's coming up with are they're just all over the place, like I feel like she's tried to go with like four or five different defenses for this. And then, when none of them work, she retreats to I didn't even write it, it's like, well, it's your name on the article, you know what I mean? Like, where you say that,
before you do the next thing, because
I can't.
Taylor, you did say that I was putting words in your mouth, but if you search on your Twitter centrist, it's very clear that you use this as a pejorative term, and like that can be your opinion, that's fine, but to claim that that's not like your ideological spin is a little frustrating.
Sure, but I would say, in what context is it? Is it in what context? Because I think
I could not find a single context on her Twitter feed, going back years, of her using centrist in a way that was not a pejorative. Every time she ever used the word centrist, it was a pejorative. It was a negative thing. And here she's like, well, it depends on how you say the word. It's like, well, no, this is how you understand the word. That's the point. You understand the word to be a negative label.
Sure, certainly. Do I get annoyed at certain centrist people? Sure.
No, that's some sneaky stuff right there. I think that there was an intention there to be disparaging, I think it's broader than that.
Okay, but this is just honestly, I didn't write the sort of things. It's fine if she had taken. If she just let me finish.
I didn't write it. If she had a problem with it, she would have asked me to take it down. Well, what if she just thought the whole thing was toxic and didn't want to touch it? You know what I mean? Like, that's not a really good. Well, she didn't dispute it. Well, like. What if she just, like, her strategy is just to not give it any oxygen,
Instead of just let me finish.
Well, you have been cutting me off pretty consistently throughout this entire exchange.
All right. Well, then this is just not going to be we're not going to be able to have a conversation.
And then her, I've seen her do this many times too,
Because we're talking about a story that was edited by so many people, and I don't know what to tell you.
I didn't write it. She didn't dispute it. 15 people agreed on this. She's throwing all the defenses out there at the same time, and just like none of them are good defenses.
Other than
okay. So did you see Ethan won his lawsuits? Wait, what? What do you mean? I think there was a motion to quash in the Reddit mod case. Did he win the case? Wait, what are you talking about? I don't think that's true. I think you misunderstood. I don't think that's what happened here. All right. So are you distancing yourself from that label?
Oh my God.
Like that. Oh my God. So you're saying you didn't write that label. So like a logical follow-up is like, okay, well, if you're saying you didn't write it, are you acknowledging that the label was not appropriate? Like, and then she just screams, oh my God.
That was edited by so many people, and I don't know what to tell you other than
Okay, so are you distancing yourself from that label?
Oh my God! If Olivia Juliana had reached out after that story and said, you grossly mischaracterized my views, I'm not a centrist.
Doesn't answer that question. I didn't write it. Okay, well, are you distant? Well, she didn't dispute it. Like she's just like 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 it's kind of desperate. Like she's just repeating the like she'll come up with a defense and I'll say here's why I think that defense is bad, or like point out problems with it, and then just jump to another defense, and then we're just on this like cycle of her saying the same defenses without really clarifying like why. Bad company with $2. If I lied, why didn't she sue vibes? Well, yeah, I think that's what she's going with here. Old secular humanist. Did I get you for 10 gifted memberships? Thank you, buddy.
Take it out. You mischaracterized it, whatever. I would have been happy to bring that to the editor, and the editor could have looked at her positions and decided whether or not that was correct.
Well, Taylor,
this is how journalism
opinion
works.
But Taylor, her opinion is not especially relevant. Like if you're saying that the language, if you're saying that the centrist language,
oh my God,
was not something that you picked, is that your way of saying that you're kind of distancing yourself from that language?
I would have, until this conversation, called Olivia Juliana a centrist because she's a Democrat in a red state, and I would.
So what's the point of saying you didn't pick the language? Why would you even say that in the first place?
Imagine that most people that are the Democrats in the red states lean to the center. Also, when I had spoken to her years ago, that was my understanding of her. And also, that's again.
Well, we have a quote from her a couple years ago calling Olivia progressive. The Rebecca Rowan with $10. Thank you so much for that. Early on, she claimed Chorus was anti-establishment in response to a claim that she herself is anti-establishment, then later claims Chorus is just there to push the party line. Yeah, I wish that one I didn't really register when she said it, but I really wish I would have explored that a little bit.
No, we did not receive any criticism of this. This is the first criticism that I've even heard of this.
Well, so I think it's important because I do think that it was.
I'm sorry you feel this way.
I take pride in that. For the record, I take pride in being the first to talk about the descriptors. Like everyone's talking about the substance of the article, but the descriptors, the loaded language that she's using, give away like a really obvious subtext to the whole thing,
But this is just completely
you don't need to apologize to me. I'm just
I mean, it's just completely unproductive.
I feel like you're becoming quite defensive and evasive right now.
No, it's frustrating because I feel like I'm dealing with the white nationalists because this is all I do all day. So
and at this point, I'm like, okay, now the conversation is taking a very different. I feel like I'm talking to a white nationalist. I mean, even Pisco here is like, oh boy, what a wild thing to say, especially in the context of what we're talking about. It is just so random. I was genuinely shocked in this moment. Just such a random thing to say based on the conversation so far. I feel like I'm talking to a white nationalist. What? The Rebecca Rowan, thank you so much for the tier 1 membership. Thank you.
Go back and forth with the white
Hutch is bald by choice, but it's not because of that.
It is the same ridiculous argument where it's like,
you think the questions that I asked you amount to like being questioned by a white nationalist?
I will tell you, they are the exact. Why don't you listen? They are the exact same words you're using, the exact same method of saying, right? When we write about Tucker Carlson, and I've gone back and forth with Tucker Carlson.
This is a common Hassan strat too, by the way. I mean, like he's got his like 6 or 7 kind of things that he says to try to discredit people. And one of them is, oh, you know who else says that? Asmongold. And I think she's obviously just like copying that tactic here. It was just deploying it in this context was especially unhinged. It's just so random, so out of nowhere. Nardbarge with the primer for 60 months. Thank you so much.
Since team on this exact issue, right? We'll say, well, we characterize you as XYZ, far right, right? Far right is actually even more common than the right with white nationalists. And every time I write about a right-wing influencer and we say, well, we are, whatever, here's the article, here, we're asking you for comment, blah, 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 blah. They will say, I'm not far right. I'm not far right. I'm progressive. In some cases, they even say, even Tim Pool types, I'm actually progressive. Okay, but
Taylor, I think
they're not. Just let me finish.
Well, so Taylor, you've been cutting me off this whole time.
Respectfully, all I am saying is that when you're writing an article, we do our best to be accurate. Now, if Olivia Juliana is not a centrist and that's so inaccurate, Again, she could happily request a correction from Wired. She never did. No one
Hutch. Can I reframe this? Because like
ever raised.
The point is not necessarily whether or not it's accurate to call her a centrist. If this was like the specific pedantic sticking point, I can see this like, oh, this is for. But it's not. What Hutch is getting at is that this article is clearly viewed as, hey, we're painting these chorus people who are taking this money as these kind of shills, these
Soy Pill gets it. He fucking gets it.
DNC operatives who are just paid to get these talking points and just repeat exactly what the do-nothing centrist Dems do, right? And that's kind of where the perspective that he's saying this is kind of like an opinionated...
that's taking a lot from an article that doesn't say a lot. And I don't doubt that that's how TikTokers were taking it. And that's not how TikTokers and people on Instagram threads are taking it.
This is so dishonest. So dishonest. She's like, well, if other people are taking it that way. It's like, no. You took it that way. You presented it that way. You talked about it in this way when you went on Current Affairs podcast. This is, I think, so far in this conversation, probably the most dishonest thing that she's said. You know, like she obviously feels this way, you know, like, yeah.
But if you actually read the article, you will see that it is quite clear what we say. And this is not a DNC.
Listen. But,
this is poor Shelby at the DNC had to like literally kept being like, guys, this is not a DNC program. Obviously, they support the DNC. But the DNC has its own influencer program.
On August 27th, you tweeted, the 90 influencers involved appear to be primarily centrist, pro-DNC,
yes,
who have not spoken about Palestine, are pro-Israel. Just a moment ago, she's like, well, you know, if people on this line right here, guys, is remarkable. Remarkable. Can we just watch this again, starting with what Soy Pill said? You know, just like listen to this whole exchange, because he lays out, you know, obviously, Taylor, you know, you're talking about evil centrist pro DNC, you know, and then she says, well, you know, people, I can understand how people, you know, if people on TikTok felt that way. And then I read a tweet from her where she's saying the exact same thing. Like, it's just...
Juliana is not a centrist, and that's so inaccurate. Again, she could happily request a correction from Wired. She never did. No one
Hutch. Can I reframe this? Because like
ever raised.
The point is not necessarily whether or not it's accurate to call her a centrist. If this was like the specific pedantic sticking point, I can see this like, oh, this is for. But it's not. What Hutch is getting at is that this article is clearly viewed as, hey, we're painting these chorus people who are taking this money as these kind of shills, these DNC operatives who are just paid to get these talking points and just repeat exactly what the do-nothing centrist Dems do, right? And that's kind of where the perspective that he's saying this is kind of like an opinionated...
that's taking a lot from an article that doesn't say a lot. And I don't doubt that that's how TikTokers were taking it. And that's not how TikTokers and people on Instagram threads are taking it. But if you actually read the article, you will see that it is quite clear what we say. And this is not a DNC...
Listen. But,
this is... poor Shelby at the DNC had to like literally kept being like, guys, this is not a DNC program. Obviously, they support the DNC. But the DNC has its own influencer program.
On August 27th, you tweeted, the 90 influencers involved appear to be primarily centrist, pro-DNC,
yes,
who have not spoken about Palestine, are pro-Israel. Those are your words.
Yes.
But you just said a moment ago, you're kind of distancing yourself from that framing.
No, I didn't. What are you talking about?
What was the whole point of like, well, you know, I people on TikTok felt that way. God, it's so dishonest. Holy moly. I felt it really felt surreal in this moment. It felt like it really felt quite surreal. But she was contradicting herself just so massively within seconds, you know. That's what Soy Pill just confronted you with, and you said, well, I can understand why people walked away with that, but those are your words.
I'm sorry. They're centric. Like, again, if a...
Okay, so they, you know, like...
Juliana is not a centrist, and that is factually wrong. And these people are not centrist, and this is factually wrong. That these content creators that are making content with Chuck Schumer, that are making content with Hakeem Jeffries, if they are...
So now we're embracing that framing. You know, now it's just like, it's head spinning. It's fucking totally head spinning here.
Not if I was wrong, if this article is wrong and it's factually wrong, then I highly encourage them to ask for a correction. But no one has asked
Can we do
for
it
a
step by
correction
steps?
saying that they are not centrist. No one.
Let's just do it step by step. Hutch, is it your contention that it's inaccurate to call Olivia Juliana a centrist?
I do believe that, yes, and I think that she used that word intentionally. Well, I don't know why you're playing down here. You understand that when Taylor uses that word, it's a pejorative.
Hang on. So separate that intent. So you can make a critique of an article based on its accuracy or based on whether there's some bad motive.
I'm trying to get to a large. Well, it's both. It was inaccurate because of this bad motive.
Your contention. I know, but let's just do it step by step. Let's do it step by step, right? Is it inaccurate? And so, and if it's inaccurate, why is it inaccurate?
It's inaccurate because her policy priorities do not line up with what any reasonable person would assert to be a centrist. When you look at the things that she's advocating for, okay, that's fine.
I mean, you can say you can just make this argument about anything.
But what does it mean to be pro DNC or pro Israel? What does that mean?
So pro DNC means pro Democrat, like pro sort of the Democrat establishment. What I would say, which is very much Chorus's goal. And
I mean, that's another like very vague concept. You know, if somebody says pro DNC, I think that goes beyond like pro-Democratic Party, because you would just say pro-Democratic Party. If you're saying pro-DNC, to me that implies something much more like intimate. To me that implies you're like pro the actions of the DNC, like you're pro like Ken Martin, or you're pro like funding strategy or something, you know what I mean? Like it goes beyond just like the party, right?
Pro-Israel means that the majority of people that we found that were public, which is why I think it's so crucial for them to actually release these names publicly, because I think if this is not the majority view held among their creators, they should release these names publicly to make it clear what is the ideological makeup of
this part. In my opinion, is the craziest part of this conversation. It gets so crazy right now. RevTop with $2. She's using TikTokers as a pejorative, by the way. Is she? Isn't she like pro TikTok? Static Air with $5. Sorry if you covered this already, but as a viewer, it felt like Pisco was flying cover for Taylor. I'm curious of your thoughts being a part of the combo. Again, like I said at the front, but based on how I know Pisco and like the way that he operates, I think he was probably wary of a pylon bad like optic situation. I think, I don't know. Me and him can have a conversation on the stream and I can just ask him about it. But I think that's where this came from. Because like I'm pressing her a little bit. I mean, I don't even think I was being very aggressive. This is me at fucking 2. You know, this is me at like 2 or 3. This is not me anywhere approaching fucking 8 or 9 or 10. I'm at a fucking 2 in this conversation. But Soypill would jump in. So I think he was wary of the optics of like a bunch of people piling on. But I felt like some of the defenses he was throwing out there, I just felt were very, you know, I don't even, yeah. Dubois with $2. We all know Pisco's chat was on Taylor's side. I don't know about that.
Fuck you, Nanners! Fuck!
That's me at a 10 right there, yeah. Psycore Games with $2. Tell your fans to install my Fallout New Vegas mods. Oh, okay. Well, there you go. All right.
Of their chorus class. But a lot of the people that we found were also pro-Israel, meaning they were expressing support for Israel against and
how many creators out of like all the creators that you saw? She's claiming that she saw creators that were expressing support for Israel, right? That's what she just said, right?
And pro-Israel means that the majority of people that we found that were public, which is why I think it's so crucial for them to actually release these names publicly, because I think if this is not the majority view held among their creators, they should release these names publicly to make it clear what is the ideological makeup of their chorus class. But a lot of the people that we found were also pro-Israel, meaning they were...
A lot of the people that we found were pro-Israel. This part gets nuts. Derivative with $5. Thank you.
Expressing support for Israel against and
were pro-is. A lot of the creators they found were pro-Israel and expressing support for Israel. How many creators out of like all the creators that you saw? Wait, what did she just say?
Were also pro-Israel, meaning they were expressing support for Israel against and
how many creators out of like all the creators that you and basically amidst the expressing support for Israel amidst the genocide. That's a pretty loaded commentary there.
People that we found were also pro-Israel, meaning they were expressing support for Israel against and
how many creators out of like all the creators that you saw would you say were posting pro-Israel posts? Can you name names there?
Well, that's the point, right? Is that they haven't published the roster. They haven't published the roster, but
I thought this was so bizarre. I couldn't make sense of this. She made a claim that a lot of the chorus creators were posting pro-Israel content amidst the genocide. I said, well, can you name any names? And she says, well, that's the point. They haven't released a list. It's like, wait a second. You had a list of 90 people and you made a claim. So like who? Like how many and like who, right?
Decent amount of ones that we checked.
Did anybody in the people that you mentioned in the article, so like Olivia Packman, Brian Tyler Cohen, did any of them post pro-Israel content?
You'll have to go check their specific feeds, but Brian Tyler.
What? Why do I need to check? Like you made the claim. Like I'm asking you to flesh the claim out. You claim that they were primarily pro-Israel, right?
Yeah. Well, some people that are pro-Israel just don't speak about the genocide in Gaza at all, for instance, and that's
not
another
the same
thing.
thing as being pro-Israel.
Yes, because a way. Yes, because a way that.
And this is also just crazy. Like there are 1,000 reasons why somebody would maybe not talk about Palestine. An obvious one would be there's just a lot of people that don't know a lot about foreign policy. There's just, when Venezuela popped off, when the stuff in Venezuela popped off, I didn't say much about that because I don't know fucking shit about Venezuela. A lot of the stuff with Iran, when that was going on, like I really know shockingly little about Iran. So I just didn't feel very comfortable talking about that, And Israel-Palestine is especially, the history is especially like convoluted and simultaneously like very charged, like let's say you're a person who is a creator and you're not very plugged in and you don't really know much about like foreign policy stuff. And, you can imagine feeling social pressure to say something, but then you look at your feed and there are people that are being ripped apart to shreds who posted pro-Palestine like posts, but maybe they said a thing kind of wrong. And then all of a sudden, like there's like 50 people quote retweeting them and everyone's, so like you can imagine someone in that spot being like, I don't know if I want to say anything, like the idea that someone who hasn't posted anything about like Israel, Palestine, that makes them pro-Israel. That is a shocking thing to say. So then all of a sudden, obviously it calls into question her framing, right? It's just like, I looked at a list of 90 people and they're mostly pro-Israel. Okay, well, what's pro-Israel? Oh, you didn't say anything about Gaza. What? If that is your judgment about how that term, like what that term means, doesn't that call into question a lot of the language that's in your article? Derivative of the $5, would you consider doing coverage of Kyle Kulinski's videos on this article to see if these journalists did as much research as you? I mean, we watched his reaction to her reporting before and it was bad. I think he did if memory serves correctly, I think he did the whole chorus was manufacturing consent for a genocide thing. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I'm pretty sure we did watch that at the time.
to this thing that someone randomly on the internet said rather than the actual reporting that you engaged in. And so to me, it was very revealing. I don't know how you can call yourself someone who is even left of center and not at least grapple with the ethical and moral questions that are raised by accepting secret dark super PAC money.
Well, they don't even want to deal with those questions. Like, they just want to sort of sling mud and make these claims. And, something I've said from the jump is, if we got something wrong, reach out. Wire has a corrections policy. Like, show us any evidence that we
Control F the transcript.
It's been over a week. There's not a single correction on the story because none of them have disproved a single thing in our article. They've just been on this other tour, sort of just throwing everything at the wall.
She does this thing where it's like,
stick on threads. One of the creators was.
She does this thing where it's like there hasn't been a single correction. Well, there have been clarifications. So like in her reporting, there was one thing in particular where one creator named V Spehar, I don't know if I'm saying their name correctly, claimed that Chorus had put her image in a pitch deck without their consent. And the clarification in the article says that Chorus reached out to Wired after the publication and said they found no record in any of their previous pitch decks of this person's image being used. So they call that a clarification. That sure seems like a correction to me. That just seems like a factual error in the reporting. Or maybe the reporting framed it. I think the reporting might have framed it as a claim from Spehar. Like Spehar claims that but you shouldn't put that in there unless you verify it still. Like even with that framing that gives her a little bit more cover, like you that ended up being not correct. And so, there were other clarifications in the article as well. So like another big one was the article alleged that people in the program were not allowed to speak about being in the program. And the clarification that they put in parentheses in the article says, a screenshot from a slideshow was shared with Wired following this article's publication by Graham Wilson, a lawyer working with Chorus, that offers several talking points if a member of the cohort wanted to discuss Chorus publicly. So that is pretty irrefutable evidence that they were not banned from disclosing that they were a part of Chorus. And so she calls that a clarification. That just seems like an error. That just seems like a factual claim was made that ended up not being accurate. But, I don't even know, what is the difference in journalistic standards between a clarification and a correction? I don't even know. In journalism, what is the difference between a correction and a clarification? Contract language did not say that at all. There's no reasonable interpretation that would reflect this. Well, have you seen the contract? Has anyone seen the actual contract? A correction and a clarification both address issues in published journalism, but they serve different purposes and signal different levels of error. A correction fixes something that was wrong. A clarification improves something that was unclear. A correction is issued when the original story contained factual inaccuracies. So the way that they get around this, guys, is they'll say according to the contract, or this creator says, and But to me, it's if you're doing journalism and you're talking to a creator and then the creator says, yeah, they used my image in a pitch deck. Well, I would assume that a journalist would want to verify that. And if you can't verify that, then I don't know why you would put it in the story. I genuinely don't know a lot about journalism. So are you not supposed to really make a rigorous effort to, double, triple, quadruple confirm something before putting it in your story? Taking somebody's word can't be the only basis of putting something in a story, right? Hutch versus vocabulary strikes again. Led Icarus with $5. When Gaza is a sticking point with them, you should look up if they ever talk about the many other genocides, and if not, ask them if they support it. Well, my goal going into this was, I know that one of the ways that these people operate is that if they sense that they're on shaky ground in an argument or a confrontation or a debate, they will like just destroy the whole conversation with Israel